means we have to do
This conference will now be
introductions
recorded.
all over again. So I'm just kidding, we're not doing that. But we will go ahead and get started. Let me figure out how to share my screen with you again. All right, here we are. So this is what we'll be doing today. We just did introductions, took a little longer than 5 minutes, that's okay. We'll go really briefly through the statewide Manatee Forum highlights. We'll have a presentation on social media guidance, and then the bulk of our meeting is going to be spent on outreach planning. We've talked quite extensively about what this committee should do next, and a lot of the interest is in community education, direct outreach of some sort, so we'll talk about that then. Then we'll have announcements. If y'all have anything that might be relevant to this committee, whether it's a funding opportunity, a project update, anything like that, please do provide that during the announcements. And last, we'll go over next steps, including any scheduling of their next meeting or moving forward with a working group, anything like that. So that's what we're going to be doing today. Does anyone want to see any changes made to this agenda before we get started? Silence is compliance. Let's go. All right, so the statewide Manatee Forum is a group that gets together every quarter. Michelle Pasowicz is, I believe, the coordinator of that. So Michelle, if you need to correct me on anything or add to anything, please speak up. We, during the last forum, received an unusual mortality event update. That, if you're not aware, was declared in 2021. The main cause of this event, which has now been a couple of years in the making, is manatee starvation deaths from loss of forage habitat on the East Coast, primarily in the Indian River Lagoon. So from that, everyone in the state is going to continue to prioritize habitat restoration and water quality improvement projects. One thing I wanted to note is that someone said manatees will feed on caulerpa instead of seagrass. So we know that manatees prefer seagrass. That's primarily what they eat. But caulerpa, which is a macroalgae, which looks a lot like seagrass but isn't technically seagrass, is a lot less nutrient dense. So one of the scientists said, if we see that manatees are eating caulerpa, which is again an algae, not a seagrass, we know that there's a lack of seagrass in the area because we know they're only going to eat that when they have to, when there's nothing else there. So I thought that was really interesting given that we're seeing more caulerpa in the Tampa Bay area. Anyway, so I just thought that was of interest to mention. We also got an update with the warm water habitat action plan that's just continuing to be implemented. And again, that is to maintain a network of warm water refugia, or areas where manatees can seek refuge during the colder winter months. And what else? We got the manatee habitat restoration projects. There were a lot of projects that were updates were provided for across the state. All but one of them are on the East Coast, so only one of them was on the West Coast, which I thought was interesting, and it wasn't in Tampa Bay. So I'll continue to pay attention during the forum to look for updates that are relevant to the Tampa Bay area. And actually at the next Manatee Forum meeting, they're going to probably, well, there was a few different subjects that were discussed as potential topics. One was a West Coast update. It may also include development permitting, erosion, comprehensive growth management, or high-speed ferries. So I don't know what actually is going to come out on the agenda. Those were just some suggested topics. Before we move on, Michelle, is there anything that you wanted to add here about the forum?
Thanks, Jessica. I think you covered the high-level topics from our spring meeting, and we are working to plan our fall meeting. So we meet biannually right now, twice a year.
And that is open to the public, but it is not really a public input opportunity. It's more of like a listening and learning opportunity. So you're welcome, anyone's welcome to attend. You just might not have an opportunity to speak up or provide comment, just a heads up. So maybe our other scientists can help with this, but the most recent manatee population survey that I could find was the 2015-2016 update. The estimate for the West Coast was 4,800 manatees, and that was not specific to Tampa Bay. So if there is something that I'm missing, I would love to from y'all at FWC or FWS. Do you have any better updates than this?
The 2015-16 surveys was the last statewide abundance, which is just broken up by East Coast and West Coast. It doesn't model for geographic areas smaller than an entire coastline at this time. However, we just flew the 2022 and 2023 surveys over the winter. We did the West Coast first and then did the East Coast the second year, and those results are expected to come out this fall. Again, will likely just be broken up by coastline or population management unit as opposed to a more specific geographic region because of our modeling abilities. But we are working on an integrated population model for the Southwest and moving over to the East Coast and evaluating how we can break that down further by smaller region.
Okay. That is helpful. Thank you for that info. And I pulled these mortality statistics from online, so they only go through June 16th. And this is only for Pinellas, Hillsborough, and Manatee counties, and only for April 1st through June 16th. So you can see the natural category, I believe, includes those early deaths, the perinatal. We've got 4 watercraft related deaths, a couple that were undetermined, and 3 that were not necropsied. So in the roughly last quarter, we've had about 16 manatee deaths in the Tampa Bay area. Statewide, there's been, for the entire year, not just for this quarter, but for the entire year, there's been 332 deaths so far, and that's statewide. So I'm not going to attempt to make any inferences on trends or compare it to last year, but all of that data is available online too. And manatee rescues. This is for the entirety of 2023 thus far. There have been, I'm not sure what the outcomes of these rescues were, to be clear, but there were 2 from watercraft, 2 from orphan, some entanglement and entrapment. Natural, I believe Sean told us at a past meeting that natural is likely due to red tide or some other impact, like not having enough food or something like that would be considered natural. So again, these statistics are for Tampa Bay, and they are for the entirety of 2023. And statewide, in this same time period for all of 2023, there's been 84 rescues. So the manatee folks have been pretty busy. So give them a pat on the back if you see them. So manatees and social media. I am going to just open this guy right here. And I'm going to try to give you some sound. So once I start this presentation, if you cannot hear it, please speak up and let me know, but you should be able to hear the presentation media.
Hello, and welcome to Engaging and Educating on Social Media. Today we're going to talk about how to have productive conversations online in the name of conservation and keeping manatees safe. My name is Alexa Heinrich, and I'm going to be your guide today. I'm the social media manager for St. Petersburg College in beautiful Pinellas County. I'm also a professional speaker, as well as a frequent admirer of wild manatees because they often swim into the large canal behind my house on Treasure Island. I understand how important it is to protect manatees and educate others about how to properly interact with them. As someone working in social media, I also understand how frustrating it can be to engage with folks online, especially if you feel passionately about a subject and someone is being argumentative. Today, I'm going to take you through some productive conversation tips that will help you educate others online about proper manatee etiquette. I'll also teach you the 1-2 rule, as well as what to avoid when you're responding to folks on social media. Let's get started. First up are productive conversation tips. I'm going to show you 3 different responses and how they could be improved so that whomever you're engaging with is more likely to react in a positive way. My first tip is to soften your scolding. Most folks online naturally become defensive if they feel they're being scolded. They're also less likely to absorb the info you're sharing because they'll be too focused on defending themselves. Our initial response here is quite blunt. You shouldn't elicit action manatees that you come across in the wild. It is illegal to feed, harass, harm, pursue, hunt, shoot, wound, kill, annoy, or molest manatees in Florida. With the right wording, it can be softened a bit. Aren't manatees amazing? While I love your enthusiasm for them, it's actually illegal to elicit action manatees in Florida because we don't want them to actively seek out human companionship, which can endanger their lives. By acknowledging a person's feelings, relating to them, and leaning into their affinity for manatees, you're more likely to get a positive response from them. Tone of voice is important when engaging with people online, and you won't get anywhere fast with someone if you make it sound like you're insulting their intelligence. Our first response is quite harsh, and the way the second sentence is structured definitely sounds like we're questioning the person's intelligence, since we're implying that they don't know something. You're not supposed to elicit action wild manatees. Don't you know that it's against the law to feed, harass, harm, pursue, hunt, shoot, wound, kill, annoy, or molest manatees in Florida? With some tweaking, the response sounds more conversational and approachable. Manatees are so cool, but be careful about interacting with them in the wild. While it's against the law to elicit action wild manatees in Florida, you should check out the Crystal River National Wildlife Refuge if you want to hang out with them in a safe and supervised environment. Keep your response to someone online direct but respectful. Watch the tone of voice you use and offer alternatives to someone's bad behavior if possible. Telling someone what they're doing is wrong without sharing useful information or resources isn't normally helpful. People respond better when there's justification to why they should or shouldn't be doing something. Our first response is the digital equivalent to smacking someone's hand because you found it in the cookie jar. You shouldn't be doing that. It's illegal to feed, harass, harm, pursue, hunt, shoot, wound, kill, annoy, or molest manatees in Florida. Whereas the edited response gives justification as to why an action is bad and how someone can learn more. Careful! It's against the law to elicit action wild manatees in Florida because it can endanger their lives if they begin to seek out humans. To learn more about how you can help keep our manatee friends safe, visit link. Share a link to the FWC website where people can learn about manatee etiquette. By putting the onus on them to keep manatees safe, you're encouraging them to learn more and do better. Now it's time to talk about the 1-2 rule. It's important to understand that not everyone is receptive online. As frustrating as it is, you have to concede that you're not going to win every argument. Some people just want to argue for the sake of arguing. Use the 1-2 rule to avoid futile conversations or falling into a troll trap. If you come across a post where someone is interacting with wild manatee inappropriately, make your first response using the productive conversation tips we talked about earlier. If the person replies to your first response but doesn't seem receptive to it, make a second response, again, using our productive conversation tips. If the person continues to be unreceptive after your second response, it's time to abandon the conversation. Do not waste your energy on ineffective arguments. Ultimately, someone who argues for the sake of arguing isn't looking to be educated and probably takes no small amount of joy from making you fight them in the comments. At this point, you're hopefully feeling pretty good about how to conduct yourself on social media when it comes to teaching others the do's and don'ts of engaging with wild manatee. But just in case, let's talk about what shouldn't be included in your online responses. Remember, you want to come off as helpful and informed when engaging with people on social media. Here are a few things to avoid in your responses to others. Name calling of any kind, cursing or foul language, an accusative or insulting tone of voice, and jargon that may be too advanced for whomever you're responding to. Doing any of these things can demean your response and make it harder to educate whoever you're talking to. Thank you for your time and attention today. Hopefully the information I've shared has been useful to you, but if you have more questions for me, I can always be reached at hello@therealalexa.com. Thanks for all that you do to protect our manatee friends and make the world a safer place for all species of flora and fauna.
Cool. So that was requested at one of our last meetings. And Alexa is from St. Pete College. She is one of their social media people and also is really big into accessible communications. So something like making sure that people can understand the tone all the way down to like making sure that the screen reader can actually read what is being put out. So she's really great to talk to about stuff like this. I really appreciate Erica suggesting Alexa. Does anyone have any questions or thoughts on that brief presentation or anything to share?
Thought it was very good and helpful.
I'm curious who, either by a show of hands or throwing something into the chat, who has experienced seeing something online that you wanted to speak up about that was either illegal or just not a good thing related to manatees? Yeah, I know I certainly have, and it's really hard to sort of make sure that you're saying the right thing, but I think turning back to these tips that Alexa provided is really helpful. I think it is important to interact with people because there really is just such a dearth of knowledge when it comes to manatee interactions, and the fact that you're not supposed to physically engage them or chase them or anything like that. So I think it is important to use our voice when appropriate to speak up, even if it's just on our own personal social media. And I think these tips are certainly helpful. So any thoughts or questions on manatees and social media before we move forward? And for some reason, I cannot see y'all at this moment when I'm sharing my screen. So if anyone's raising the hand or anything, just go off mute instead because I can't see you. Okay, so outreach planning, let's get on down to it. So at our last meeting, we went over manatee conservation messaging. What would be the most beneficial to manatees from a science-based perspective and a social science perspective. So we came up with these three tenets that are the most important for protecting manatees: seagrass conservation, responsible boating, and manatee interaction etiquette. For our purposes of outreach planning, I think we have to take all of those into account, but we also are really sort of going to focus on the last one or two, And we'll get to that in just a moment. Oh, not doing that. Sorry. So what I'm going to do is stop sharing this screen and open up a different document for you. Share that with you. Maybe. GoToMeeting is just not cooperating with me today, but that's okay. We're gonna figure it out. All right, so I took the liberty of putting together this document. The Tampa Bay Comprehensive Conservation and Management Plan is just what it sounds like. It's a plan for conserving and managing the bay and the bay's resources. And part of that is manatees. So I went through the CCMP, which is what I'll call it for short, and pulled out specific activities that were relevant to the Manatee Awareness Coalition. There were at least a half dozen here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, yeah. So I highlighted the, can y'all see this okay, or is it too small on your screens? Maybe I should make this a little bigger. There we go. Okay, so I pulled those different activities out to see what would be the most relevant to us. I spent a lot of time going over this, so I pulled out just the metrics. So the benefits or performance measure that would actually benefit the environment or the resource that we're talking about, what the results would look like, and what the deliverables would be. So that's all of these here from those activities above. And if we scroll down a little bit more, I grouped these together by performance measure, results, and deliverables. And bear with me here, I'm making a point. Deliverables I grouped by deliverable type, so publications, workshops, research, or reports, just to sort of continue to filter this and make it make sense to me. I also grouped those deliverables by audience, so whether it's voters, law enforcement, there's no true audience listed, legislators, or dredging observers. And then I grouped it by responsible parties. So some of this is not clearly defined, some of it is researchers. And last but not least, I grouped these 7 deliverables by the feasibility for us as the Manatee Awareness Coalition to tackle from easiest to hardest. So at the top, we've got voter education materials, voter guides, other education materials. I think that's super feasible for this body to undertake. And regularly scheduled workshops or webinars for law enforcement personnel. That's also something that we've talked about that is in the CCMP that we could tackle. A white paper framing law enforcement resource limitations and sustainable funding sources, ongoing progress reports from the task force, so from us essentially. Another is enhanced digital maps and technology, printed online and smartphone versions of the boating and angling guide to Tampa Bay, electronic navigation charts with audible alerts of boating speed zones. Those are sort of 2, right? Like the middle one here is certainly something we could work on. The last one, we could work on it. I just don't know what the path forward looks like for that personally. We also have annual manatee mortality reports to identify watercraft related deaths, annual synoptic surveys to estimate manatee populations in Tampa Bay in the winter, occasional or as needed aerial surveys to estimate manatee distribution and habitat utilization in the summer. Those are things that I think the Manatee Awareness Coalition can push forward and help identify funding and help pull the right people together. But these surveys are not something that I see the MAC as a coalition actually doing, but is something that we can try to make happen. And lastly, guidelines for and implementation of supplemental imaging tools. So standard training, performance, and reporting requirements for marine mammal observers. I believe all marine mammal observers are federal, but I could be wrong about that. Somebody feel free to correct me. So that would be one of our federal partners that would need to sort of make that happen, and that's something we can assist with for sure. So I am curious what y'all think about this. In the past, we have talked about targeting boat rental businesses that are along the water in Tampa Bay. We've talked about targeting neighborhood association presidents and that sort of thing for educational materials, and for like the boating companies, trying to get them to change their boating practices to maybe include something like a training that's required for all of their clients or something like that. So there's a few different ways that we can tackle this. I also put together, let me share this one, a campaign planning document that I've used in other resources and in other ways. And the way that I see our potential paths forward is either targeting agencies like FWC law enforcement with those annual workshops, and or targeting the community, so the boat rental companies, the neighborhood associations, that sort of thing. So I thought we should discuss this as a group for a little bit, decide what our priorities would be, who the target audiences are that we want to look at, or deciding which of these deliverables we want to tackle first, and then move forward from there. That might mean that we'll complete this campaign planning document, or that we come up with something just a little bit looser. I'm open to whatever y'all are thinking. So this is the part where I really want y'all to engage on this. What do you think about these different deliverables? Which of them are you interested in tackling? Or if it's something that's not on this list, that is okay too. We can do something else. There's just a lot more opportunity with these specific activities because they are implementation of our CCMP, so there could be funding behind that. There could be a lot more staff time dedicated to it. If it's something that's not on this activity list, though, that doesn't mean that we can't do it as a coalition. That's just another option. So can I show the full list of, what do you mean, Erica?
Sorry, I can only see down to annual manatee mortality reports. I can't see the whole screen.
I think I'm sharing the whole last page. Does anyone else have an issue seeing this whole page right here?
No, Jessica, I
the
can
last
see it.
page.
I can see the whole page.
Okay, maybe it's just my
Okay.
format. I'll change it up.
It might be that you zoomed in. I think you can zoom in on the presentation.
I'll have to zoom out actually. So okay, thanks.
Also,
That's
the
better.
document is linked in the agenda, so you can see it in the, click the link and just open it yourself as well. So you don't have to look
Put
at
it in
your
the
screen.
chat as well, Jessica.
Thank you. Okay, I got it.
Oh, you did. Thank you, Ed. Yeah.
Um,
So, yeah, go ahead.
So sorry,
What do you think?
being an older MAC member, some of the previous campaigns that we've done with public education really focused on specific neighborhoods and neighborhood associations. And I feel like if we're looking for other models as examples, like the stormwater drain markers and the current other things that TBEP does with water goats and things like that, it really does seem to be that neighborhood associations and groups, if you specifically target them, it seems to be getting better response with environmental messaging.
Okay. So like targeting coastal neighborhood associations and or nonprofit groups, or
Yeah, I feel like we did been 100 years, but we did quite a few presentations in Apollo Beach when several of those new neighborhoods were being started there to talk to homeowners who would be on the water, boat owners for the first time and passing the Apollo Beach area with their new boats and new homes that were built over there.
Right. Yeah.
But maybe circling back to some of the newer homeowners that are on the waterfront in Pinellas County would be a great thing too.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. And to that note, a good friend of mine is a property manager for long-term rentals, and he recently asked if he wanted to do like a welcome letter for new tenants that move in, and he was like, "What do you think should be included in here?" And I was like, "Oh, you should definitely put stuff about environmental education on there for people who even are long-term residents in Tampa Bay may not know some of this stuff, so not just new people." So I think that could be a great idea too.
I think that would be a fantastic idea. It's like some easy, quick education right when you move in. Kind
Yeah.
of know the basics.
Yeah, Kiara, are you new to the area? Like what, or even if you're not new to the area, what kind of avenues do you think would reach you? Would it be your neighborhood association meetings? Would it be social media? Would it be direct email? Like what avenues do you think would reach you?
Yeah, so Eckerd College is a pretty closed campus. So like neighborhood, like township stuff, unless you're going out like into St. Pete, I don't think would reach someone on campus.
Hmm.
Um, but definitely things through social media tend to gain like a lot of traction very easily and can be spread like wildfire. Um, but me personally at Eckerd, I think everyone is very like aware. We have people that will sit by Frenchman's Creek and yell at the boaters if they're going too fast. Like we're very aware of like what's going on and the dangers to manatees and things.
Yeah.
But I do think that for people like living in the St. Pete area or things like that, um, I'm not sure how many people still read the newspaper, but definitely something like you said, like when someone moves in, just kind of like showing them the ropes of we do have a lot of manatees here and you do have to be careful, especially um, if you have apartments that are like on the water where they have a dock that's connected. So they would most likely be having some sort of boat or jet ski water vehicle. I'm not sure.
Yeah. And Ed, I see your comment targeting boat rental operations around warm water refugia can be associated with the messaging to HOAs. Yeah. So it sounds like we're interested in doing more community level stuff. Is there anyone interested in doing agency level stuff? Like, I'll give you an example. When I worked at FWC, I worked in the fisheries division, and we would have, I can't remember how often we did it. It wasn't very often. It wasn't often enough. But we would have law enforcement officers come to us and do an entire day of shark identification so that they could better enforce shark regulations, shark fishing regulations. So maybe, obviously it's pretty easy to identify a manatee, but having some sort of workshop on what the actual rules are, how to better engage the people that FWC officers are engaging, boaters, beachgoers, that sort of thing. Is that something anyone would be interested in?
Hi, this is Kim, and I would certainly be interested in that type of workshop. And I thought that that was something that was identified in the management plan as, an activity
It
already. I think it would
is.
be a good opportunity for, to have a better understanding of where maybe some trouble spots are and those types of things. I don't know when the last one was. I think you mentioned that there was at least one in previous years, but definitely think it's a good idea.
A while ago.
Yeah. Yeah, Ed, do you know how long ago that workshop was?
It was probably like mid 2010s, I think was the last one that
Okay.
was coordinated. Probably like
Okay.
2015, 2016 time period, I think.
Was that something that the MAC ran, or was it a TVEP staff or someone else that, do you
Nanette
recall?
was good at organizing the officers to meet periodically. So, yeah, we kind of facilitated them getting together and having these discussions.
I do wonder, there could be some, I don't know what you call it, synthesis, I guess, between um, shorebirds and manatees, because I know that the shorebird people get FWC officers together. I think they're trying to do it every year before nesting season starts, so perhaps there could be like a half shorebird, half manatee type thing. We could take advantage of an already put together opportunity, if they were open to it. I'm not trying to take over the shorebird meeting for manatees, but could be an opportunity. So it sounds like we really do have like two tracks. We've got the agency track and we've got the community track. Community including businesses, residents, visitors, everybody kind of. So what do y'all think we should do from here? Should we, because we've only got about 30 minutes left in this meeting today. I think we could make some progress on this campaign planning document if we wanted to, or we could break out. I can't actually, I don't think I can do breakout rooms in GoToMeeting, so that wouldn't work, but we could look at one first, maybe agency first, or community first, and then agency. We could form some short-term working groups to start to pull these campaigns together. I want to hear from y'all. What are you interested in doing moving forward from here? Because it's definitely, I can certainly help organize and I will help push it forward, but it'll be a group effort. It'll be something that multiple people should engage in, if not long term, at least for like a short term working group. So I'm going to open the floor to y'all and hear about your interests.
I was just curious if anyone had any experience in approaching these boat rental businesses and how receptive they are about trying to inform their customers about manatees in Tampa Bay waters. I mean, do they slam the door in your face, or are they, receptive to it?
So I can speak to that a little bit. This is Paige Lansky with National Wildlife Federation. So we do not do that in Tampa Bay waters, but we have a program actually up in the Panhandle where manatees are kind of newer to the area. And so what we're doing is outreach, and one of the elements of that is taking rack cards, basically, we have a manatee sighting network with the Dauphin Island Sea Lab. And we take rack cards to those boat rental agencies. And for the most part, they have been very receptive, and, they'll hand out their rack cards, or they'll have those available when people actually do the rentals. Now, I don't follow through to see how, much they actually hand those out or push those on to people, but actually we've had a lot of great reception from those, and I imagine it would probably be true in this area as well. Just some insight.
That's good to hear.
We've done some
At least,
outreach.
if the information's there.
This is Kim, State of Manatee again. We've recently did some outreach in the Volusia County area and had a really great reception. The owners and managers were really happy to have some materials. We were in a similar boat in that we didn't necessarily find out how many they had distributed, but definitely not too many doors slamming in our faces. And I think one thing that we could do for this, initial effort is to try to inventory what some of our organizations already have available as far as collateral and things like that, to see what we can give out.
Yeah, that's a great idea, Kim.
And in general, just we in partnership with FWC, have done some boating guide updates. And if we print materials, we usually distribute to some of the rental agent boating rental facilities throughout the region. And they've always been receptive about accepting those materials, whether or not they're actually transferring any sort of awareness or enhanced education to the rentals, the renters that are receiving those boats. It's hard to follow up on that, but they are generally receptive to distributing those materials that we give them.
In 2019, FWC did a statewide warm water awareness campaign where we distributed materials and information regarding appropriate wildlife viewing, and we focused on eco-tour groups that advertise manatee viewing or manatee swimming programs statewide, or even eco-tour groups that were adjacent to warm water sites, many of which were in Tampa Bay. So I can see us recreating that, and in coordination with the Nature Conservancy and the Save the Manatee Club, we do have a new educational sign graphic that is available for download off of our webpage. I know Kim and TRA have a few, and we have a few in-house as well that have already been printed, but it is for appropriate manatee viewing manners as well. And these could be some things that we could request that the boat rental places install for their customers to see.
Yeah, that's great, Michelle. I haven't actually heard about that 2019 campaign. Are materials from that available online where I could look those up? Do you know?
Not from the campaign, but I could send you the flyer, the letter, and the stickers that we sent out. But I'll drop a link in the chat of the new sign I just mentioned.
Okay, awesome.
This is Tiare with Save the Manatee, and I just wanted to mention that a few of the marinas we visited let us know that in a previous storm, some of their signs had blown away, and so they were very interested in receiving more signage. And they also, if they had concerns about other operators in the area or a lack of enforcement, they also brought that up to us as well. So it was really useful to go in person. We had some volunteers from Volusia County come out with us so we could break up the total number and kind of each have around like 6 or 7 marinas that we visited. And then we had a volunteer day and kind of went out. So it was really good. And some of the places we visited twice. So just to check back in, and some of them had given their materials away and happily took more. So we had our volunteer coordinator working on following up with some of those groups too.
I'm curious, is anyone here connected to boat rental companies? One of the longstanding issues we faced with the MAC, with this coalition, is we're a lot of manatee enthusiasts and scientists, but we don't have many business representatives. In past iterations, we had a couple of people from the fisheries community, but do any of y'all have any relationships with boating companies in the Tampa Bay area? Okay. I think these are all great ideas. TJ and Michelle, I wonder, were staff trainings ever part of past campaigns that y'all have put together, or to anyone, not just TJ and Michelle? Like a trained MAC volunteer going to a company and providing a 30-minute training to their staff at their staff meeting or something like that?
So there's 2 separate answers to that question. So when we went out for this specific volunteer day, our volunteer coordinator paired every volunteer up with like a staff person or someone who had been with us for a long time. So there was always someone who had that background with them, but they did receive a little bit of training. But then on the other side, we have our Guardian Guides program, which is a voluntary manatee eco-tour certification. And that is a training that is about an hour-long presentation that goes through the history of, manatee threats, manatee biology, proper ecotourism etiquette. And that's to go for an operator to be certified through that. every staff member needs to go through the training, and each new staff member also needs to go through the training, like just as an FYI, because we wouldn't want people to say they're certified and they have 10 new people there who've never seen the training and don't have that knowledge. So there's definitely an opportunity if, you know, a boat rental place were interested in learning more about manatees and their local zones, that a presentation could be made and we could go and do that. And those trainings are completely free. So we go out and do those in person or virtually, but they don't have to pay anything.
That's really cool. I like that idea a lot. Is there any sort of like advertisement of this list of certified companies?
So on our website, we have a Guardian Guide separate website, and if you get certified through us, then you are listed on that page of the website, and everyone needs to be recertified yearly, and it's up to the owners to make sure all new staff members are certified, have gone through the training, and we do secret shoppers where we'll pop in and kind of see how their staff is doing, and if it's not up to our standards, we'll reach out to them. But we don't actively like advertise for the program. At this point, we want people to be interested enough that they're looking for more information, that they reach out to us. You know, they hear about us through other guide programs and things, but it's also small. But we do get new guide groups that reach out to us a lot for trainings, and we'll go out. But I know if you were thinking about, you know, something bigger, like a training course that more people could take, that kind of thing, we have been talking with UF-IFAS in Hernando County about potentially making an ecotourism type course like that people could take, because they have their angler course and things like that. So there are other possibilities out there. It's just a question of, you know, who would create the course and where would it live, the training, and who would be responsible for giving it, are all things, you know, to consider.
Yeah.
That's an avenue we explored a while back as well. TJ's statement about working with IFAS, we worked with them to better understand what our options were for creating this green stamp of approval type of program for ecotour groups as well. And it didn't end up turning into anything that we could manage. And IFAS wasn't able to be the manager of the program at that time either. So I can see that potentially budding from what she's working on in Hernando County specifically. So maybe on a small scale for now, but it is important to make sure that everyone's getting the same information that's consistent with our messaging, and we're happy to collaborate on that. And then also, Jessica, for your awareness, Kate Schmid will be leading an inventory of Hillsborough County boat access locations coming up in the next fiscal year. So just wanted to let you know that we'll be able to provide some data as far as where there are rental facilities in Tampa Bay, and that could help build that list.
Awesome. What is the timeline for that? I might have missed it. Sorry.
Still in the planning phase, but
Okay.
we hope to have it complete in 2024.
I also wanted to mention Kim and I, working with Boating and Waterways, FWC, and Michelle, we all worked together to kind of create a PowerPoint presentation type package that has additional manatee safe boating, wildlife safe boating information that isn't currently available in the boating safety course, because we had done the boating safety course and saw that there really was limited manatee information in there. And while it's not required to have more than the minimum in the course, we were told by Brian Raywinkle with FWC that a lot of operators would be willing to offer it if they had it, they just don't have it. So we had worked together to create this type of package, and we sent it to FWC. So it is FWC approved because Michelle worked on it with us. So there are some materials that already exist that if we did want to create a longer presentation for rental places, we could use that as the basis for it.
Okay.
is a little bit off topic, but I know when the St. Pete Pier reopened, your building that you have there, when I went into it, I was kind of surprised that I didn't see any real information about protecting manatees in the Tampa Bay area. I haven't been back there since, so I just wondered if you've updated signage in that building, because I know there's a lot of people, locals and tourists from all over the place that go through your building that you have there.
And Denise, I did not hear which building you were talking about.
It's your building at the St. Pete Pier, the freestanding building that you pay to go in.
Yeah,
That talks
the
about,
Discovery Center is actually owned by Tampa Bay Watch, which is one of our partners. It's not the estuary program, but we could work with them to maybe distribute materials and put up information about boating responsibly in the bay. They're, like I said, they're a good partner of ours, and we've worked with them in the past.
okay, that would be great, because I know when I was in there, it was packed full of people.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm surprised no one here is from Tampa Bay Watch, are they? We usually have somebody from there. I just noticed that. Okay. Other thoughts or ideas about how to move forward? I think Kim had a good idea about doing an inventory of the resources that are currently available, so we're not reinventing any wheels. I think getting together as a working group might be a good idea.
I second a working group. I think that would be a good idea. We could potentially make a sign up for those who would be interested in being a part of it.
Do y'all as a whole think that we should have two different working groups, one for the sort of agency law enforcement interaction, one for the community-based engagement, or do you think it should sort of stay together for now? They seem like two different things to me, but I also don't want to tax people with being on two working groups, so I don't know.
My opinion on that is to start as one, and then if there's specific action items that are, working with the government, then we could break off into another one. But I think since a lot of the education, if we're talking about education for law enforcement and boaters and outreach, that's all together. And then if there's a specific task that needs to be done, we can break off into another one. That's my personal opinion.
Does anyone agree or disagree with that?
I think I would agree with that.
Okay.
I think you're going to end up with a subgroup of people who are also interested in, or able to help with that type of workshop situation. So either doing it now or doing it as a subgroup of the overall working group is an option.
Yeah, agreed. Okay. Well, I do think, what do we think about next steps for this working group? Should we meet? How often should we meet? Do we think it should be a once a month or every 2 weeks kind of thing? What do y'all think about that? Or just schedule our next meeting and go from there? I don't know.
I think maybe if we could, during this meeting right now, we could talk about some action items for what the working group would work on, and then based on the list, figure out how much time we need, because we're asking the different groups to pull together materials they might already have or any materials they're aware of, and then see how long that might take people. It might take some people longer than others to do. So I think based on how many items there are, we could figure that out.
Yeah. I'm kind of a fan of to help keep my thoughts organized, I like this campaign planning worksheet. So I'm gonna share that again with y'all, and maybe we can just spend 10 minutes filling in what we can, and that'll identify some of those actions that TJ is talking about. How does that sound to y'all?
Sounds good to me.
Anybody else?
I think it sounds like a good step.
Okay, cool. Let's do it. All right. So this is just from a different campaign planning worksheet, but let's answer this first question. What is the problem you're trying to solve? What's a succinct way to put this?
Generally, just manatee awareness. I mean, that's I mean the broad answer, right? The general population, who is either visiting or new to the area, they just are unaware of anything about manatees. So I mean, that's really just the gist of it is getting manatees kind of in their scope of attention so that they can understand.
Yeah.
Asking as someone who's not familiar with kind of locals and how like they interact with manatee information, but do locals typically know manatees are there and it's tourists who don't? Like, is there an issue with compliance for the zones by locals, or is it mostly people who rent and aren't from the area?
I mean, my opinion is I think there are plenty of locals who are aware, but don't follow the guidance or rules.
Okay.
Yeah. So I definitely would not say it's just visitors.
There are also so many new people who are going to be identifying as locals that don't know.
Jessica, some of those questions seem right for the surveys we're contemplating for the general public and the community to better understand their awareness on certain issues in Tampa Bay. So we could work with Blake Simmons, who's our environmental social scientist, to develop some survey questions to get a broad swath of population to address some of these questions you guys have.
True.
I do think that any type of outreach would be more effective if we knew exactly who we were targeting with each different type of outreach. So, if it's that people who don't come to the area, who come to the area and don't know at all, are probably going to be more receptive than people who know that there are zones and don't care to follow them. And trying to reach those people will probably need a different approach. Just like, that's just my thought on that. And it's a question of how do we convince them that it's important to follow the zones if they already know about them.
That's true. So the problem we're trying to solve really broadly is manatee deaths and injury and a lack of knowledge about manatee interactions, protection, and conservation. Does that sound like the right response to this question?
I think so.
Who is working to address this problem? I think we should list a lot of the people in the room. Who else do we have here today? I forget.
Pinellas County.
Pinellas. Yeah. We can always add to this. So what is our long-term goal? What's the big idea goal? And can we put a metric to that of some sort? Can it be, we would like to see a 20% reduction in manatee watercraft interactions? Like, how do we, what is our long-term goal? How would you phrase that? And I know this is a big question, so it's okay if we can't really answer it today. I understand.
So I'm kind of just struggling to even imagine how we would actually measure, if there was sort of a decrease in negative interactions, with manatees. Like,
Right.
obviously, yeah, the overall goal I think would that is the overall goal, is to just decrease negative interactions. Because I feel like, I guess, you could argue that no interaction is a positive interaction, but as long as you're not disturbing the manatee, then you can observe them. And that's so.
There was a study a few years ago in the Tampa area, I believe, where people went out and educated boaters and provided them with polarized sunglasses and a few other materials, and then they came back, I think, the next summer to see how much of it was retained. And I only mention this as like it provides an actual standard for measuring, um, the transfer of knowledge. So I guess we have to decide, is our goal, like obviously the long-term goal would be to reduce the number of boat strikes, but also to, educate, and how do we measure that education, I think, is a question. So, I mean, that could also be one of the answers, is determine how we are going to, you know, like determine the standard for what we're doing, could also be one of the goals, at least like a short-term goal.
So potentially, TJ, I think you were just saying, can you repeat what you just said? I'm sorry.
I was just saying that one of the goals for this could be determining a standard of how we decide we've made an impact or not. Because I think right now it's hard to say. It's hard if we just jump right in and we don't have any way to determine if we've made an impact. Of
Right.
course, anything we do when nothing has, compared to nothing, is great. But then if someone
Sure.
asks, well, how do you know if it's making an impact? We need to have kind of just determined that before we get started. Um, another way we could think about it is, right now the MAC hasn't reached out to any marinas, and then in a year we can have a standard of how many rental places and marinas do we want to have provided information to within a certain amount of time, right? Like these short-term goals. And I think if we think about it too broadly, it'll just be a bit confusing, because there's so many different ways to approach trying to do this.
Yeah. What do we think about this short term and this intermediate goal then?
I wonder if the short-term goal, kind of like you already listed inventory available assets, from coalition partners, and then maybe determine what holes we need to fill as well, once we've decided, what we already have available.
Yep.
Has there been a recent compliance study in Tampa Bay?
I don't know. I think, am I thinking of like a watercraft interaction hotspot analysis? Maybe I'm thinking of the seagrass, what you call it? Ed, help me.
Yeah, we've been working with IFAS on a prop scarring hotspot analysis for seagrasses. That's been the most recent sort of boating study that we've been part of. It
So,
aligns somewhat to the protecting the resource is important to manatees, but there hasn't been sort of a direct survey of awareness on manatee strikes or proper boating protocols to pursue in the bay, to protect manatees. So that we have a project in our next fiscal year that is supposed to help us develop other key indicators of the bay's health. So some of the things you're talking about, some of these intermediate and long-term goals, are things that we might be able to work on through the estuary program, if it's a key metric that we want to track in the future. We just have to work with this working group to kind of identify what's the most appropriate metric moving forward, that there's available data and it's would be repeatable in the future to track that information through time.
So I think it's not as simple, as providing educational materials could be, like not as straightforward. But if it were possible for one of the partners in this group to help organize that type of study, that's something you can easily replicate a few years down the line and see if there has been an improvement in voter compliance, especially if there was a targeted campaign in a specific area. So I think that could be one way to go about it. From what I remember of the study I've read in the past, it can be just having someone posted near a zone and then measuring how, what percentage of people go the speed limit within the zone and what don't, and then kind of doing a metric that way.
mhm. So we are about 10 minutes out from wrapping up. Two things before I forget. For some of the people that are here, I know that you're not on the Manatee Awareness Coalition email list. So if you were forwarded the email or found the meeting information opportunistically, please throw your email address into the chat, or you can shoot me an email. My email address is there. I want to make sure that y'all stay informed about future opportunities with the Manatee Awareness Coalition. So I think what we should do now is decide when this working group is going to meet next. We can either decide when the working group is going to meet next, or I can send an email out again to do that. I think maybe planning it now is a more direct path to it actually happening. So I don't know what y'all think. Should we go ahead and schedule a meeting now, or should we do like a doodle via email?
I vote for a doodle poll because I think a lot of us have multiple calendars, and so it'd be easier to be able to sit down and check all my calendars and decide when I'll be free. Are we thinking a month from now?
Could do a month, sure. What does everyone else think?
Good.
Okay. Yeah, I'll send an email out then for roughly, well, I'll send it out this week, but it'll be for roughly the end of July, that week of the 24th to the 28th. Or maybe I'll span it like the 19th to the 26th, so it's across 2 weeks just in case. And we'll plan a working group meeting then. Before we wrap up, let's do, what else do we have? Oh, announcements. Let me share my screen with you again. Okay. So there's just a few announcements that I could think of. The Community Advisory Committee meeting for the Tampa Bay Estuary Program is on July 26th. As a reminder, this coalition, the Manatee Awareness Coalition, is sort of like a subcommittee or an active working group of the Community Advisory Committee. So that's a good place to go hear about issues beyond manatee issues. I encourage you to attend if you want to. Also, the Bay Mini Grant application period opens on July 27th. That is a grant opportunity up to roughly $5,000 to do any sort of habitat restoration, whether that be removing invasives, planting natives, putting in some kind of restoration technique, or community education. So it's a really great program. Nonprofits and schools can apply. Small businesses can as well. There are some stipulations on there, but if anyone is interested in more information on that, hit me up. And last but not least, there was this Florida Friendly Landscaping Essentials course coming up September 15th. And as a reminder, we know that nutrient pollution is one of the major issues in Tampa Bay, and we can all do our part by putting in more Florida-friendly landscaping to prevent nutrient pollution from getting to the bay. So what else do we have to add to this? Any events, funding opportunities, projects, updates, anything like that that you want everyone to know about? Nobody knows nothing? Nothing cool's coming up? No fun events?
I have a recommendation, but I needed a chance to look up exactly what it is.
Okay.
Is Michelle still on? I don't think she is. So at the next FWC commissioners meeting, they're going to be talking about the Weeki Wachee Springs Protection Zone. And I know the new Springs Protection Zones, a lot of people are interested in following how that's going, you know, as far as rulemaking and things like that. So if that's something you're interested in, I just wanted to make everyone aware that they're going to be talking about it at the meeting.
And do you have the date for that?
Kim might. I was going to pull it up. It's in St. Pete. So if you just look up the next FWC, let me see, FWC Commission. That's why I wanted to look it up first.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Put you on the spot for sure. While they're looking that up, if you have it, yeah, go ahead.
Let's see here. July 19th and 20th in St. Pete. So I'll send the agendas here. I'll send it in the chat.
Cool. Thank you. Any other announcements?
Hey, Jessica, I was just going to also add, so here at the Tampa Bay Estuary Program, we are launching a new social science subcommittee. And so that committee is going to be a group of dedicated experts in the human dimensions of conservation and restoration in Tampa Bay. So a lot of these projects, you know, thinking about community surveys and new social indicators of change in the region are going to be explicit focuses of that subcommittee. So if anyone has an interest in being part of that subcommittee, you can either send me an email, or we've got a little email sign up link at our website, and I just posted that in the chat.
Yep. Cool. And what's the date for that, Blake? Do you have one set yet?
The first meeting, we don't have a date yet. It'll probably be in September. And then in August is when I'll be reaching out to all of the interested members. And then we'll kind of, you know, throw around a doodle poll to find out what would be the best time for everybody. But probably September will be the first meeting.
Cool. All right, y'all. Well, I believe if we stick to quarterly, the next Manatee Awareness Coalition meeting will be in September as well. I won't set a date for that yet. Do keep an eye out for the doodle email so we can schedule that working group meeting. If anyone was here that didn't throw their email in, please do, unless you've already received an email from me. Especially some of the students, I'm sure that probably Dr. Porter forwarded the email to you, so I want to make sure that you're on the list as well. So without further ado, we will wrap up on time. I really appreciate y'all coming out. I think we had a really productive day. I'm excited about doing some stuff and not just talking about stuff, but actually getting out there and making something happen. So I appreciate all of y'all coming and being willing to provide input and expertise and just willingness to engage. So thank you a lot, and I'll see y'all soon.
Thank you, Jessica.
Thanks, Jessica.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.